Daily bread, that's what's going on. Yeah, okay.
And mounted it on the board, So Brad's got that, and my daughter's got his survival maps, which were printed on silk.
All right.
And it had that area of Italy, but it was on silk. I don't know. I guess so you could wad them up or whatever. But their survival maps were on silk. And so she's got the
All right, y'all ready to roll?
survival map.
Let's do it.
Story.
Keith is teaching this. This is actually the second time that Keith taught this. The first time that he taught it was at the very beginning of COVID. And he taught it on Zoom. And I think like 3 people came. But I loved it. I thought it was super good and informative and really interesting, not only from a historic standpoint, but just as far as our windows go and how much information is in each of those windows. And he's going to unpack that a little bit more for you, but I'm going to pray for him before he begins, and I think what he has to say will be kind of interesting. Really. Lord, we just lift up Keith to you. We thank you for the work that he has put into this. And we just ask that as we gather here, that you would enliven our hearts, not only to the history, but to the history contained within our church, Lord. And we thank you for that. In your name, amen.
Amen.
I was just messing with Keith on kinda to get him back.
Like Todd said, I did this, 4.5 years ago? September of 2020, I believe, is when I did on Zoom. And he asked me to come up with a subject for Bible study, and I thought, well, we are the Episcopal Church of the Holy Apostles, so maybe we should be able to name 12 of them, or some, because I know at the time I couldn't. I may come up with 9. So I thought it'd be fun to delve into their lives, what we know in the Bible, what we know happened after the Bible, historically, traditionally. And we're going to find out this is, a lot of times, is going to be like an episode of Whose Line Is It Anyway? Everything's made up and the points don't matter. But what I did when I talked about each apostle, at the end of it, I put up a picture of their stained glass on the screen so that I could look at the symbols in the window that dealt with that apostle, that symbolized that apostle. And because I did that, this has become known as the stained glass window class. Nothing to do with the apostles at all about the windows. So I am going to delve more into the history of the windows during this class, more so than I did last time, because I got some things wrong last time about the windows. Fortunately, Agnes was online and could correct me. So, if you look at these pictures up here of when the church came up the river in 1959, the building was built right around 1900, sometime between 1898 and 1903, something like that. In 1959, when it arrived here, it had windows. If you look at the picture, you can see it has openings all through it, but it only had one glass window in it. That's that red round glass window above the front door. That was the only glass window that was in the building when it arrived. Some 12 years later, they want to put in some newfangled contraption called air conditioning. And doing so, as we now know, it's hard to cool a building when you have heat sources coming in. So they decided to put windows in it. Carlton Emery, and if you ever had the opportunity to meet Carlton, he was very proud of letting you know he was a charter member here at Holy Apostles. So he would say, "Hi, I'm Carlton Emery, charter member." He and his son developed a glass-on-glass technique where basically you would take the shape of a window, cut the clear pane, then he would take colored pieces of glass. He had no power tools when he started this, cut each one and sand each one by hand. Then glue them to the clear glass, and then to simulate the lead seam, there she is. In case I screw up, yay! I was going to say I'm going to make mistakes, but now she's here, so that's good. So to simulate the lead lines between the stained glass, he used auto body putty to simulate the lead lines in between. It was strong, dried fast, and it came out really well. Something he developed over time. The glass pieces he used mostly came from this area, but he also collected them from Orlando, Daytona Beach, Connecticut, and he made a trip to Germany, and while he was there, he collected glass there. We only had 11 windows, so to quote Carlton, he dusted Judas off and decided to use the other 11 apostles for the windows. He started installing those 11 windows in 75, finished it in 77. I think the last windows he finished were done in 91. Each window is unique to that particular apostle. That's what we're going to discuss for the next 3 weeks. Each one has an HA logo, that H and A. Anybody notice something odd about the A in that symbol? It's tall, right? He did that on purpose to simulate the tall pitch on our church. So that's why that A is so tall. And then each one was given and dedicated to somebody. In the long term, at that point, there was a memorial fund and there was a bell tower fund. And some of the money from there went to the windows at one point, but eventually the congregation paid those funds back and somebody paid for each one of those windows where the church didn't have to pay a dime for them. So that being said, let's talk a little bit about apostles now. Yes, Agnes?
How to say something.
Oh, yes, please do.
Wasn't the A, the red circle in the A, represents the circle at the peak of the church?
Yeah, that one glass window
The red circle.
that we had. So he incorporated all this stuff when he went to these windows. See, that's why I love having Agnes here to teach us these things. So now I'm going to teach a little bit. First off, got to separate what's the difference between a disciple and an apostle. A disciple is merely a student. You're going to find that some of the disciples of Jesus were actually disciples of John the Baptist first. An apostle, so in our terms, a disciple is going to be used with a follower of Jesus. An apostle, on the other hand, is somebody that is sent on a mission, specifically by Jesus himself. And we look at the Gospels, just before he lists the apostles that he called, it explains why he called them apostles. He sent them out. He also gave them authority. Heal people, cast out demons, etc. In the first 3 Gospels, there are lists of the apostles. You'll notice that some of them have numerous names. A lot of them have 2 names, some have 3, and it made it extremely difficult when you start researching these people because there's at least 3 or 4 people named James. You've got a number of Judases, Simons, etc. I'm going to try to unpack each one of them for you as we go through this. Mark's list is very similar. Andrew is put forth, but very similar list. Likewise, Luke has a very similar list. You notice Judas is always last. Always last. John never lists the apostles. In fact, he never even names himself as an apostle in his gospel. He refers to himself as the one who Jesus loved. Now, he does name some of the apostles throughout his gospel, but he never makes a list of them. Likewise, in John, the whole calling of the disciples is a little bit different as well. What you find in the Gospel of John is the disciples tend to seek Jesus out. They come to him. In fact, it appears John and Andrew were there when Jesus was baptized. And so they met Jesus through John the Baptist. Right after Andrew met Jesus, he goes and grabs his brother Simon and says, I need you to meet the Messiah. He actually knew he was the Messiah and says, I want you to meet the Messiah. Likewise, when Philip met Jesus, he goes, Nathaniel, you've got to meet this guy. So they kind of came to him. So some people will point out a discrepancy in the Gospels. I don't see it that way. I see it that Jesus had the opportunity to meet some of these guys before he went into the wilderness, fasted, was tempted, and then when he was ready to start his mission, he went back and found them. Acts, Luke lists the apostles again. However, you see Judas is gone, and Matthias has replaced him. Anybody sees something weird about these names? Like, well, no, and there's like, they don't have all those nicknames in Acts like they did in the Gospels, but is there any weird name in here that just doesn't make sense to you? Nathaniel? Yeah? Any others?
Bartholomew.
Well, yeah, Bartholomew, that's on a window. How many Thaddeus's are on our windows? This is why. Thaddeus is believed to be Jude, as well as Judas, son of James, is believed to be Jude, not Judas Iscariot. And Nathaniel is believed to be Bartholomew, one and the same person. And as we discuss each one of these, I'll explain this a little bit further. Now, amongst these 12 men, Jesus had an inner circle. That inner circle were the 3 apostles that were with him. Yes, ma'am.
Turn your sound up a little bit more.
I can try. I'll just speak louder. I talk very low, so I'll just...
No, and it's I'm getting tired.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. So his inner circle, there were 3 apostles with him. That was John, James, and Simon. And they were with him at 3 very important events that no other apostles got to witness. The raising of Jairus' daughter, at his transfiguration, and those were the 3 that were with him, praying with him in the Garden of Gethsemane the night he was betrayed. Now, keeping in mind that Jesus had probably met these people before he went out and found them along the Sea of Galilee, I think it's interesting that the inner circle is these 3 people because they were business partners. It says in Luke that James and John, sons of Zebedee, were partners with Simon. They had a little fishing business going. Now, in my research, I came across some interesting archaeological and historical evidence that some people believe that even though they were from Bethsaida, originally that's where they had their business, but they moved it to Capernaum. And the idea is they did it to get a tax break. I'm not making this up. Well, I could be. You never know. Doesn't matter. It's all made up. Points don't matter. But all of the apostles, save one, was a Galilean, and they were from this area. Most of them from Bethsaida and Capernaum. Is all this clear as mud so far? Okay. So let's delve into one of the apostles. We're going to take them in order. I'm only going to do 2 today. We'll do the other ones later. St. Andrew, considered the first called. He was considered the first called because he was with John when he baptized Jesus and met Jesus at that time. Andrew comes from a Greek word, Andreas, meaning manly. This is kind of significant in that it tends to lead us down this path that Andrew spoke Greek. And it's quite possible. If you got Simon running the business as president, and then you got James and John as his partners, Andrew seems to me to be like the head of marketing. Spoke different languages, several languages. So he was a disciple of John the Baptist. He's the one who introduces Peter to Jesus. At the feeding of the 5,000, he's the one who found the little boy that had the bread and the fish. And in some schools or some circles, they call him the introducer. Not only did he introduce Peter to Jesus, but at one point there was a group of Greeks who wanted to meet Jesus. They went to Philip first. Philip is a completely 100% Greek name. So Philip probably spoke Greek as well. Philip wasn't comfortable doing this, so he deferred to Andrew. That shows us that maybe Andrew was a little bit more important type of disciple. Philip deferred to Andrew. Andrew then takes the group of Greeks to Jesus to meet him. Doing this, I often wondered, how many languages did Jesus speak? As we know, he spoke Aramaic. He probably spoke Hebrew when he chatted with the leaders of the church. I don't know if he spoke what he spoke when he was talking with Julius Caesar or Pontius Pilate. But then who knows? He's Jesus. And then you see that Andrew is almost inner circle type. There was one event where he's with Peter, James, and John, and Andrew is the fourth disciple there. So you see he's kind of right on that cusp. He carries some importance, not quite inner circle importance. So what happened to Andrew after the resurrection and ascension? Here's where it gets fun. They start down here in Judea, and they split up. They put the church in charge in Jerusalem with somebody, and then the apostles go out. Who knows where to? Most of this is all tradition. There is some history, but it is believed that Andrew traveled up to present-day Turkey and then all around the Black Sea, which is now present-day Russia, Ukraine, Romania, Moldova, Bulgaria. It is believed that this is where he preached, all up here above the Black Sea. At some point, having that Greek background, he made his way from this area, Black Sea, to Patras. And Corinth is right about here, but this little town of Patras. When he arrives in Patras, he meets a wife and the brother of a very prominent, influential man. He heals them. From whatever disease they had, he heals them. They convert to Christianity. The man's wife becomes a Christian, and because her husband doesn't convert, she withholds sex from him. In recent couple of decades, Andrew has become the champion of a woman's right to say no because of this incident. Found that interesting. But since Andrew supported this woman in her right to say no, this guy, with all his influence, has Andrew arrested and crucified. Quite the price to pay. Andrew, and you're going to hear this story from other apostles as well, does not want to die in the same manner as Jesus, so he asked to be crucified on an X-shaped cross. And you'll see that when you see Andrew, he carries an X-shaped cross with him. Some reason it seems very important where the bodies of these people go. His body was believed to have gone to Amalfi, Italy, where they buried him. Over the next hundreds of years, his bones go scattered all over the world. Some go to Constantinople because that's where he preached and founded a church in Constantinople. Some were said to be given to crusaders when they came in as gifts. Thanks for helping us against the Muslims. Here's a gift, a finger bone. Have fun. It said that Richard Lionheart was a recipient of some of Andrew's remains and took them back to England with him. In the year 400, it is said that a man from Amalfi took some of Andrew's remains to Scotland, took them to a little town called Fife. They immediately built a church around these bones and renamed the city St. Andrews. And we all know what St. Andrews is famous for, right? Golf. Yes, golf, of course. In memory of Andrew. Golf. So he has become the patron saint of Scotland, Russia, Ukraine, Barbados?
Did the bone go there?
Oh, wait. 17 cities in Spain, England, Italy, Portugal, and the Philippines, of all places. And of course, he's the ecumenical, I said that right, I think, ecumenical patriarch of Constantinople. Here's where it gets fun. Flag of Scotland. Cross of St. Andrew. Cross of St. Andrew. I was watching a documentary that was made about 12, 13 years ago, and some reporter went around asking the people in Scotland, what do you know about St. Andrew? And they're like, nothing. But they get to party once a year on St. Andrew's Day. November 30th is recognized as the day he was martyred in Greece. So they have a big party. Russia, this is kind of cool. In 1698, Peter the Great established the Order of St. Andrew. That would be the equivalent of, say, our Medal of Freedom. Some 1,000 people received this award before the Bolsheviks took over in 1917. When it was abolished, they went back and tried to erase all history of these people receiving this award. Soviet Union collapses in the early 1990s. It's reinstated. In fact, to this day, the Cross of St. Andrew is the Russian Navy ensign that they fly. It became, the Cross of St. Andrew became the flag of Gascony. Some believe it was in homage to the Scots that helped them in the Crusades. Others believe that Clement III used the flag of St. Andrew as a rallying cry to rally troops to the Third Crusade. No one's sure how it did end up in Gascony, but it did, and became so popular that it became the flag of the Kingdom of Netherlands. Who ever heard the Kingdom of the Netherlands? But what's interesting is they added the little things to make it look like branches, actual wood. You'll notice that, you may or may not notice, but the king of the Netherlands was William III of Burgundy. So it becomes the flag of the Kingdom of Burgundy. That's down here right next to Spain. In the late 1500s, Philip of the House of Habsburg from this area signs a treaty with Spain, marries into Spain, becomes King Philip of Spain. So this becomes the flag of Spain. They signed this treaty because they were fighting the Moors in southern Spain, and they combined their houses. This becomes the flag of Spain. This flag now travels all over the world to Spanish settlements like Barbados, the Philippines, and Florida. So that's where we get the Cross of St. Andrew on the Florida flag. I kind of liked it when it was on an airplane myself. But anyhow, that is the influence that Andrew had just by having a tradition that he might have gone to Greece and gotten crucified. But he carried that legacy around the world. Now for us, St. Andrew was the first apostle window that Carlton did. He put a little cross in all of them at the very top. He devoted the top third of the rectangle to the apostle himself, the bottom third to whatever symbols they had. This was the very first window he did. Like I said, he did not have power tools. He had to do everything by hand, cut, file, sand, everything. And you can see it's kind of raggedy. They get better. There's the cross of St. Andrew to symbolize Andrew. And the HA with the little red dot. And then he does a unique border around each one as well. This one was given by Carlton and Marjorie in memory of Carlton's father, Theodore. Questions on Andrew that I cannot answer?
The little things around the outside signify anything?
No, they do in some. Some they do. Some he was just having fun, trying different things. But this typically doesn't mean anything. It was just he's playing with different borders. There, we're going to find one or two windows. It does mean something. So I'll do one more, hopefully before everybody runs off to daily bread. St. Peter. Simon, a.k.a. Peter, was part of the inner circle. In fact, in John 18:10, John identifies Peter as the one who cut off the ear of the slave when they arrest Jesus. I always found that an interesting story because, first off, I didn't ever picture the disciples packing, but apparently he did, and Jesus was like, "Put that away, put your sword away. Come on." I never even considered them carrying swords around with them, but I guess it makes sense. Just never thought about it. He actually walked on water. Kind of cool. I mean, hey, I'll take a few seconds, But he very famously, when Jesus asked, "Who do you say that I am?" he said, "You're the Messiah, you're the Son of God." And Jesus said, "You're right. On this I will build my church." Tradition is, or some people look at it as like, "Oh, Peter's the rock of the church." I tend to believe that recognizing Jesus as the Messiah is the rock of the church, not a human being. And I'm going to take that to the bank because Peter himself said we are all rocks building the church. So Jesus then gives him the keys to the kingdom. And to pay him back, Simon denies him. Although after the resurrection, he was probably not the first one in the tomb, but in 2 Gospels, he actually did enter the tomb after the resurrection. He's the one who stood up and preached on Pentecost. And then in Acts 12, when he's in prison, an angel comes and saves him, gets him out of prison. He's the first one to preach to the Gentiles. Most people look at Paul as that role, but Peter was the actual first one to do it when he visited Cornelius' house. The Gospel of Mark is traditionally accepted as Peter's memoirs, if you will. John Mark traveled with Peter, and it's believed that Peter told him stories of Jesus' ministry and what happened. If you read Mark a lot of times, it's like, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened. There doesn't seem to be this constant, one step to another. They never go anywhere, it just happens. So it's believed to be basically his memoirs, if you will. And then, of course, he's believed to have written or dictated 1st and 2nd Peter. We believe from Paul's letters and his own letters that Peter traveled from Judea up into this area, which is Turkey. He wrote his letters to Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia, which is all right here. And then eventually ended up over here as well in Corinth. Some people believe he went to Rome. There is some evidence in the Bible because he mentions Rome. Well, Babylon is what he mentions. It's been interpreted that he meant that to be Rome in 1 Peter. Now, going to Rome, there's actually very little historical evidence that he went, but there's a lot of tradition that he went. And we get most of that tradition from a book from the 2nd century called the Acts of Peter. Now, in that book, in that text, there is an actual Actus Petri cum Simon. Now, that does not have anything to do with Simon Peter, except for Peter with Simon. You guys remember the magician Simon in Acts? Philip comes across this magician. He goes and gets Philip the evangelizer, not the apostle. Gets confusing. And so he goes and gets, I believe it's Peter and John, to come help him with this magician. He wants to buy the Holy Spirit so he can perform miracles and make money. Legend has it that Simon went to Rome. The magician Simon went to Rome. Peter's like, oh, no, you can't go there. You're going to corrupt everything. He's going to cut him off. So he's going to go meet him, and they end up having a miracle battle. This is all legend, all myth, all tradition, but that is presumably how Peter ended up in Rome to battle Simon the magician. Now, when Peter gets there, I kind of picture him as being like Han Solo at this point, going, I have a bad feeling about this. Because after all, what did Jesus tell him? So he will not come out of this very well. So according to this legend, he turns around and he's done. I'm leaving Rome. I don't need this. And on the way out, he runs into Jesus, who's walking into Rome. And this is where we get that famous quote, Quo Vadis. I think that was a movie in the 60s. Yeah, what was it? Anthony Quinn or something? I forget who was in it, but I didn't even look it up. Was that who it was? So the idea is he asked Jesus, where are you going? Quo Vadis. And Jesus goes, well, apparently I got to go get crucified again. And Peter goes, I tell you what, I got it this time. And he turns around and changes his mind, goes back to Rome. He ends up in a legend, there's different stories of this, but he ends up in a battle with Simon, who somehow has levitated himself. He curses him or prays for him something. Simon falls down, either injures himself fatally, or he hurts somebody else when he falls. Nero gets so upset at this that he has Peter arrested. And eventually, somewhere 64, 67 AD, he is crucified. And he also, like his brother Andrew, chooses to be crucified differently than Jesus. So it's tradition that he was crucified upside down. Some versions have Paul being beheaded on the same day. Some versions have Peter's wife being executed with him. And as she's being crucified and he's being crucified, he is supporting her and preaching to her the entire time. Peter is the patron saint of, no kidding, popes and Rome. Net makers, shipbuilders, and fishermen. Locksmiths, got the keys to the kingdom, right? Locksmiths. Now here's one that I find interesting. Cobblers. People with foot issues. Any idea why?
Shoes.
He walked on water.
Oh.
So he must have magical feet. He walked on water. So he has somehow become the patron saint of people with foot issues. And of course, he is the patron saint of any city that bears his name. In this window, he's got almost the same cross that Andrew has up top. He did a little bit different here. Instead of little ovals, he did the ovals sideways around the border. And then he's got the HA, the keys to the kingdom, symbolize Peter, and then, of course, St. Peter. Now, here's what, I can't remember the exact number, so the St. Peter itself right here, you see how things are a little cleaner in this window? Carlton's getting better at this. This St. Peter area right here has 54 pieces of glass in it. The border has 78 pieces of glass. No, I'm taking Carlton's notes. And the keys themselves are 30 pieces of glass, just in that little area. This particular window was given by Mr. and Mrs. Eugene O. Clark in memory of Addie Ramsey and Harry Gene Turner, or Harry G. Turner. I don't know why I want to say Gene, but Harry G. Turner. Anyhow, those were the two I was going to do today. I know you guys want to get out here in about 5 minutes, right? For daily bread? Yeah, so I'll leave it there with these two, and we're going to do the next week. I want to save this guy, because to me, this was one of the most fun ones I did. And this one's going to be a lot of fun, so I want to spend plenty of time with him. So I'll stop it with the two apostles this time. Yes, ma'am.
Quick question that you might not have an answer to. I
think so.
Do you know when St. Peter was born?
Yeah.
They were all presumably born around the same time, about the same age as Jesus, so you're one. That's, from what I found, almost all these guys were about the same age. Now, we're going to find as we go deeper into this that some of them were probably good friends, maybe even related to Jesus to some degree. And we could start having a lot of fun with that. Yes, Pat?
I may be mistaken, but I think the Ramseys were Mary Clark's parents.
I don't know. Agnes, you're up.
The Ramseys?
Stage left.
People at
Go
the,
back one slide.
the Ramseys, did you say?
Ramsey
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Turner, I think that's,
Weren't those Mary Clark's parents?
Turner was Mary's maiden name, yes.
right. So I think Ramsey was probably the
Yeah.
mother's maiden name.
Yeah. You were saying you didn't know where those names came from.
No, I don't. But that's why Agnes is here, and you. Keep me straight, because I don't know who these people are.
Yeah,
I know some of them, like I knew Carlton and Marjorie,
yeah.
but that's about it, yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else? What did I get wrong, Agnes?
You're doing great.
Here's St. George, the dragon's